Hey everyone, it is Julie here with TipRanks, and I once again have the pleasure of being joined by Sylvia Jablonski from Defiance ETFs. Then we're talking about their newest launch, which is CAPA. This is the first US listed ETF built around AI capacitors and MLCCs. It is a fund that is tracking the corner of the AI infrastructure trade that doesn't get nearly as much attention as GPUs and chips, but still plays a very critical role in powering the whole build out. So, Sylvia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Julie. Great to be here today.
Now, as I mentioned, CAPA is the first US listed ETF focused on MLCCs and capacitors. So, what made Defiance decide that capacitors specifically deserved their own fund right now?
So if we look at the AI trade, right? AI is this word that seems to just encompass everything. But when the average investor thinks about AI, I still think that the focus goes to kind of like GPUs and NVIDIA. But what's happened now is that it has really, expanded, and there are many pillars and different, subsectors and subsectors now of AI and what is required to actually power AI and to get it to work. And so what really caught our attention was just this broadening AI trade. And the first phase was all about the GPUs and semiconductors. Now investors are starting to think, like, what's next? What's the derivative? Like, what does it take to actually build, to power, to cool, to allow these massive AI systems to work? And capacitors are really one of those components that are essential, but people don't really think about them. So as these AI systems and servers become more and more power intensive, they need sophisticated power management. They need voltage stabilization. They need filtering, and that translates into a growing demand for these. You said MLCCs, these multi-layer ceramic capacitors and other advanced passive components in order to continue powering this. And so we've been reading and hearing a lot from different outlets and agencies like TrendForce, for example, recently reported that the top companies that are doing this, like Murata, Samsung, Taiyo Yuden, just to name a few, they're at their 5-year highs for book to bill ratios and for orders and things like this. And so CAPA is really just about identifying this niche within the AI trend, but it's like running water for AI. It's a necessity.
That sounds definitely like a critical part of the AI build out there. So, could you walk us through what qualifies a company for this index and what does the advanced capacitors and passive electronic components actually cover within this?
So you have, this enormous amount of electricity that moves through AI servers, and that power has to be delivered with precision. And so capacitors basically help smooth this out. They help electrical fluctuations. They help deliver power. They help AI essentially run. So it's like the electrical plumbing of AI. And so what we do is we're looking at the companies that are specifically generating their revenues, 50% or more of their revenues from these types of activities. So they're like these tiny components, but they have enormous use amongst like servers, accelerators, networking equipment, and data centers. And essentially, they're the most advanced products that are needed for AI to run the way that it should.
Now, I can't help but notice that this CAFA is launching the same week as NVIDIA earnings. Is that timing intentional? And how does capacitor demand fit into that broader AI CapEx cycle that we obviously have been hearing a lot about this earnings season?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty relevant because NVIDIA is really the quarterly gut check, if you will, for AI and AI cap expenditure, and maybe even bonds now, right? Because of the new deal that NVIDIA is now involved in terms of debt financing, things like this to build out AI. But so, we know they report on the 26th. So I think that what investors sometimes miss, though, is that NVIDIA is selling another generation of powerful accelerators. And the more GPUs that are out there, that means the more servers that are out there, that means the more networking, memory, cooling, and power equipment that are out there. And so, again, going back to, kind of this fun, what capacitors do, they include multi-layer ceramic capacitors that are essentially working in order to power all of this. So polymer capacitors, tantalum and ceramic capacitors, advanced passive components, electronic materials, all of this stuff that can basically, again, work to do voltage, filtering, noise suppression, energy storage inside of AI servers, accelerators, networking, hyperscaler data centers, and all of that feeds into and NVIDIA, right? They're kind of the brains, and this is the power behind the brains, if you will.
Now, when we talk about the demand story, obviously there's the AI servers and data centers, but is there a broader electrification and power angle to this too?
Yeah, so you have AI servers and you have hyper scale data centers, and that's where the power density is the most needed. But then you have these custom ASICs from companies like Google, from AWS, which create this major source of high component demand. And basically all the AI server upgrades and growth in these custom ASICs are the drivers in the recent surge of the orders of these MLCCs. And then you have robotics, you have autonomous vehicles, you have um, industrial automation, you have space, renewable energy, powering electronics. All of these things require sophisticated voltage management. And again, that's where capacitors come in. So the larger thesis here is that, it's electrification plus compute. This is the true bottleneck. Like when we think about people throw around the words picks and shovels and bottleneck, like this is the actual bottleneck because we're putting so much computing power out there into cars, robots, factories, the cloud, and all of that requires some sort of power management, and that's where capacitors really play a role. I think it's really interesting because a couple months ago, I had heard someone on a news clip say something like this, like everyone's missing it. Capacitors is the trade. Capacitors is the AI trade. It's as big as without capacitors, you have no NVIDIA. It can't go anywhere. And so, that's what's really interesting about this space.
Yeah, I feel like I've just recently learned about capacitors. It was a whole other layer to this that I was a little ignorant to. So it's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then when we look at this ETF, a lot of the leading names in this space. So we have Samsung Electromechanics, Murata, TDK, Taiyo Yuden, based in Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, rather than the US. So how should investors be thinking about that geographic exposure in a US listed ETF?
Yeah, so actually, I think there is this misconception that the AI trade is just mostly American, right? Because of NVIDIA and a lot of the hyperscalers are in America. But the actual reality of this is that the physical AI supply chain, including capacitors, including China robotics and things like that, is extraordinarily global. Japan has decades of expertise in this. Precision manufacturing, passive electronic components. Korea and Taiwan are critical. China is critical in this. You have these companies like Murata, TDK, Taiyo, Samsung Electromechanics. They have substantial technical expertise in this, and they're not US companies. And so, for the US investor, CAPA, the CAPA ETF, CAPA essentially provides US listed vehicle, the ETF itself, to access the global supply chain, which is the pure capacitor trade. Of course, investors are just learning about this new trend and perhaps asking, why aren't the US chip companies in there? Again, chips are the brain. This is the power for the brain, right? So this is something different. So CAPA is just really about investing in these companies. They're helping deliver power to the brains. They happen to right now be international companies. And as compute becomes more powerful and power dense, we're going to need more of them. And the best way to access them for US investors through a US ETF like CAPA.
And if someone is looking at the Kappa ETF alongside some of Defiance's other AI adjacent funds, you have AIPO, QTUM. How does this Kappa ETF fit into that lineup? What's the big differentiated pitch?
So it's not a differentiation, it's a complement, right? So the broad-based AI trade is probably like if you just think about the average investors first go at AI, they might look like at a semiconductor ETF. But what they really want to look at is, kind of like the different pillars of AI. So you have machine learning and quantum computing. So that's where quantum comes into play. You have connectivity in space. That's a major part of the AI build out. That's a major part of this transition and fourth industrial revolution. And that would be a UFOX, right? Then we have the AIPO. So that's basically AI power and infrastructure. You have an ETF like AINF, which is the AI inference, right? That's a huge part of AI and the AI build out as well. And we have CROB, which is China robotics. The best robots right now are in China, and they're produced solely in China. We're hearing a lot about this topic with the recent IPO that hit the market. This is another part of all of that, right? So now we need to power all of that. How do we power that? The machine learning, the quantum computing, the hyperscalers, the AI machine learning, the robots, the spaceship, like all of this stuff. You need capacitors. And so it's very much a complement to this trade.
Very cool. It sounds like Defiance has all angles of this AI trade covered now with these ETFs, which is really exciting. So, Sylvia,
There's
I
more to
appreciate
come.
it. No, I'm sure, right? Continuously growing here.
Yeah.
So, thank you for all the insight on CAPA today. I really
Thanks,
appreciate
Joey.
you joining me. And for all of our viewers who want to learn more, of course, you can head on over to the Defiance ETFs website. We're going to have links in the comments down below. And let us know if capacitors were on your radar before or not in the comments. We always appreciate hearing from you guys. Thanks for watching.